Um, interesting. Hello, everybody. Not quite working. Let me just try that again.
Are we live?
We are not. We are live, but Andrew, we have a big problem. It's Thursday. That's probably what the whole problem is. It isn't Friday, so we're messing up left and right. And the intro video is refusing to play.
Well, there are two people you can blame, Keith. Either Mark Zuckerberg, who's to blame for practically everything, or Steve Bannon. Who should we choose?
I think the answer has got to be based on this week's news. The answer has to be Steve Bannon.
That guy looks like he not only should he be in jail, but he is in jail.
Yeah.
And you know what's even more outrageous?
What's
People
that?
will be horrified to learn that Keith Tier, my friend, and the host of That Was the Week, is about to defend this villainous character, Steve Bannon. So, Keith, you argue that Facebook shouldn't be banning Bannon. Is that right?
Well, they're not banning him.
Well, you agree with that. You're the only person, I think, in the universe who's actually supporting Mark Zuckerberg on this.
Well, the test of banning opinion really comes down to it's not a test unless you really disagree with someone. If you really disagree with
Bannon, I mean, even his naming means that he really should be banned. Why do you think he's called Steve Bannon? Because by definition, a man as gross looking with as gross ideas should be banned. Surely you're saying that he should be allowed to make comments on Facebook about beheading people. That should be legal.
Well, what actually happened is that post was deleted, right?
Well, but isn't the controversy now about Bannon putting posts on Facebook saying that the COVID guy, what's his name, the doctor who everybody loves, Father Christmas, should be beheaded, and pikes put to symbolize the terrorism of the Trump regime.
This is what the Guardian said. It said Bannon appeared to endorse violence against the FBI director Christopher Wray and the infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci.
And let's be honest. Anthony Fauci is the American version of Father Christmas, except a professional one, a doctor, a nice guy, white hair, blah blah, bringing us presents like the vaccine for Christmas.
So he made some comments in his podcast on the 5th of November, and you know, if you and me right now said Bannon should be hung, drawn, and quartered, that would roughly be the equivalent of what he did. And by the way, this podcast is going to be on Facebook.
Listens to it. They maybe some people listen to you. They certainly don't listen to me.
Right. So to me, it's not a very controversial point. People say all kinds of rubbish that you don't agree with, and the introduction of banning into our culture as a method of disagreement just seems stupid to me.
Okay, I mean, I buy that to some extent, but at what point, Keith, should we ban Bannon? Let's just say that he's allowed to make his arguments on Facebook about beheading Anthony Fauci.
Yeah.
What happens when he says, well, actually, I'm not only in favor of putting 6 million Jews into the gas ovens in Nazi Germany, but I think all American Jews should be put in the gas ovens. At what point do you say, no, enough's enough, Bannon, we're going to ban you?
Well, the traditional Enlightenment, traditional liberal point of view is there is no point at which you should ban someone for what they say. There isn't. There's no such point.
Well, there is in Germany. You're not allowed to make those comments about the Holocaust, understandably.
Well, you didn't make the ones that are banned. In Germany, you're not allowed to say the Holocaust didn't happen.
Okay. Well, let's say Bannon said the Holocaust didn't happen. It's all the invention of Soros.
Then that would be removed in all the places that have policies against it, and that would be completely normal. But I think it's if you try to be consistent, and my starting point is, do I want to be banned? Should I control what I say because I'm in
Well,
fear
it's
of
quite an
being banned?
achievement to be banned. It's like you got to be a Bannon to be banned. I mean, most people don't care what guys like you and I say.
The history of banning is historically has been the right banning the left, but in recent years it's the left banning the right.
Yeah, well, they're both a bit censorous, I think.
And so as a person who identifies with the left, I don't particularly want to be scared of someone else's opinion. That rather than tell them why they're wrong, I ban them, because banning them to me seems like a sign of weakness, of fear. It's not a sign of strength.
I buy that. So what about Keith? I don't know if it's in the newsletter this week, but this fragmentation of social media, whether or not Bannon should be banned from Facebook, the reality is that social media now is fragmenting like a giant iceberg. You know, Twitter and Facebook are splitting up into lots of little smaller icebergs. So now we have, what is it, the Parler, or Parley, the right-wing social media network. Isn't that really what's going to happen?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There is an antitrust case being rumored in the Washington Post today that Facebook will face, as Google is.
Yeah, no, I buy that. Well, I want to get back to that on the Facebook antitrust stuff.
But I think,
I mean, this isn't going to happen because of antitrust. It's simply that conservatives hate Twitter and Facebook now, so they're going to set up their own social media network.
Yeah,
fair enough, right?
There's this article this week which aligns with that, called the Substackerati, and it's really about the ability of people with opinions to both publish and cluster together on social networks that are self-reinforcing. I joined Parler last Sunday, by the way, just to see what it was.
What was it like?
And it was kind of like joining Twitter. You were offered a list of people to follow. Ted Cruz was high on the list, as I recall.
Was Bannon on it?
Bannon was on the list.
I hope he had a better mugshot than this one, did he?
And so I joined it, and it was like the most boring, awful, content-free space that I've ever been in. So I suspect even the right wing, in order to stay in a thing, need it to be interesting.
I mean, the right want to be on Twitter because they want to be horrified, and the left want to be on Parler because they want to be horrified, right? And on the other hand, what actually happens is they all congregate into the same echo chamber and feed each other's virtue and anger. So do you think Parler could be for real?
Well, it's definitely for real. It's
Mercers are backing it, right?
There's some dispute over who's backing it. It isn't totally clear. Two Las Vegas individuals claim to be the founders.
Well, the Mercers, I thought they were associated.
I have not established for my own good that I believe anything yet about who owns it. But there's
do you think ultimately, we'll go from political networks to individual networks? Do you think at some point a social media network will be built around individuals? So you'll have a Barack Obama social network or a Donald Trump social network?
No, just because I wouldn't use the word social network, but yes, if you mean Bill Gates, by the way, is the best example of this. Bill Gates now has a media empire. He's got his What I Read stuff where he shares books that he reads. He's on Twitter. He has a newsletter. He's regularly interviewed now across media, and he pulls it all together and aggregates it. Individuals will start to be able to amplify their voice in all kinds of different ways.
And Bill Gates definitely looks more palatable than Steve Bannon. Who do you think is going to lose more, Keith, when Trump gets thrown off Twitter? Twitter or Trump? Or neither? Or both?
Twitter will be fine. Twitter is basically the wire service for the human race. There is nothing
for the liberal human, the global liberal human race.
All the human race. I mean, everything's on there.
Yeah, but when you have Parler and all these other ones, and everyone migrates there, then Twitter will become increasingly an echo chamber within an echo chamber.
I don't think that will happen. I think Parler will exist in parallel to Twitter, and Twitter will be the granddaddy of wire services. and old media will relate to it and put tweets on air and so on and so forth. It won't be replaced. Twitter is a phenomenon.
Yeah, let's move on. I'm tired of looking at this mugshot of Bannon. He's giving me the creeps. What about antitrust, Keith? Just
We probably should.
we always have something on antitrust, and the new one is now the rumor. You say you have an interesting link in the newsletter that Washington D.C. is going after Facebook on both the Instagram and the WhatsApp front.
Yeah, so this is today's Washington Post. There's the headline. It's in the newsletter, written by Tony Rome, and it's a short article, but it's reporting on strong rumors that there will be an antitrust case coming from both state and federal investigators relating to the Instagram and WhatsApp acquisitions, and specifically focusing on the data integration that Facebook got out of that. And so if there is an antitrust violation, it's around data. That's the Washington Post piece. No reason to disbelieve it.
Fascinating stuff. Be interesting to see how the Biden administration will treat Facebook. No Paul Graham this week, Keith. We're missing Paul, but there is something on another one of your VC heroes, Elad Gil, a very interesting piece about his insightfulness. Why is Elad Gil such a special VC?
Elad he's on the leaderboard of all the angels in the entire world for successfully investing in unicorns. If I can do it while we're live, I'm going to go to Airtable, and I'm going to pull up the leaderboard of angels, the global leaderboard of angels. I call it investor performance. And let's go to the angel leaderboard and let's put it on the screen. This is let me look at the filters to make sure it's global. Yep, it is indeed global. And Elad Gil is number 7. I don't know if you can see that.
What is he, counterintuitive? What's his particular gene?
Well, let's go across and look. He is invested in Gusto, Stripe, Checker, Opendoor, OpenDNS, Zenefits, Notion, Brex, Samsura, and Anduril Industries. So on he's got a 16% success rate in terms of how many of his investments end up being valued over $500 million.
So he's batting about 150, which is pretty good.
It's really good. Now, there are actually 6 doing better than him.
Where is Paul Graham on this list?
He's not. Well, Y Combinator would be on this list. So if you go to the accelerators and look at the top, Y Combinator is number 1.
So he's not as good as Paul Graham.
Y Combinator's in all of these.
What about Elad? Let's go back to Elad for this week. What is it about him? What's your sense? What does the article suggest? He grew up in an unusual circumstance. His a nurse, academic parents. Do you think it was the lack of privilege, the fact that he moved around so much? Is that what gives him special insights?
I personally believe when you have to achieve in order to feel good about yourself, and you're never happy with what you've achieved today, which is a characteristic of people from modest backgrounds often have. It's basically they didn't have enough love in their lives, and they're constantly seeking love. And the last time they got it isn't enough to satiate the need.
Sounds like Steve Bannon.
It's definitely describes me. I can tell you, I can wax lyrical about my upbringing and the need to keep going.
I'm the reverse, by the way. I had too much love when I was growing up, so I like to be disliked.
Interesting. Tell us more.
Well, this is another show time we will discuss myself. So the other good piece of news, and maybe you're also describing Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, especially Jobs in his love of being loved. There's some incredible Apple news, as if we don't need any more incredible Apple news. And it's not even an iPhone update. It's about Apple now revolutionizing the traditional computer, the desktop and the laptop. What's the Apple news this week?
So, I've got three pieces on this. We talked about it a little bit last week, but all we knew last week was what they'd announced. This week, we have got the results from people who've got these machines and tested them. This is Malik's piece saying that it's Steve Jobs' last gambit. That's
a headline that we'll see 100 more times.
And then Ohm actually is in twice. Is it time to system on a chip the central processing unit? So he has a picture of how computers used to be. And then it's not coming in yet due to my bandwidth, but there's a picture of Apple's M1, and the difference is phenomenal. But what it means in short is that a $999 MacBook Air can outperform a $15,000 Mac Pro at, for example, rendering video on a timeline. And so Apple has basically done the impossible. It has reduced the size, the cost, and the power consumption of a chip whilst massively multiplying its capability.
Are you saying then that I need to get a new MacBook Air?
You got to be careful because it doesn't run every Mac program yet. So, for example, if you were dependent on Adobe Photoshop, the answer would be no. Wait. But if you're happy to use Final Cut Pro and Affinity Publisher, which is a clone of Photoshop, the answer is yes. Absolutely yes, by the way. Double yes. I'm sitting doing this call with you on a Mac Pro, which is a year old and cost a lot of money. And it isn't as good as one of these new inexpensive laptops.
So Apple once again is proving that there's life in old age. You can be a startup even if you're an old company. And your startup of the week this week, Keith, is not really a startup, is it?
The startup of the week is a company we're all familiar with. The startup of the week is, wait for it, drum roll.
Not Apple.
Airbnb.
They're not a startup.
Well, they're a private company. By the way, they could have gone bust during the COVID pandemic. They had to both raise a lot of money and let a lot of people go, thousands.
Yeah.
But they survived and they're now prospering. They just reported their revenues, which are very good, and they're now filing for an IPO. And there's a great article from a publication called Protocol, which is appearing more and more in That Was the Week. Everything you need to know about the IPO. And there's a Crunchbase News piece as well, where they break it down.
You do have a piece also saying that tech IPOs aren't what they used to be and that we should expect a lot of rather damp IPOs. Are you saying that the Airbnb IPO is going to be a big deal?
I haven't got a clue. I'm a very bad stock picker. I will tell you, Palantir and Asana, which went public recently, haven't done so well. Snowflake has gone down from its first trading price. On the other hand, I bought stock in Li, Neo, and Xpeng, which are the three Chinese competitors to Tesla a few months ago, and I'm up over 100% in all three of them.
Well, presumably with Airbnb, I mean, with this vaccine, surely their business will go back to relative normal by the middle of next year, won't it?
I'd say the middle of the following year is the only thing you can be sure about.
They're going to be so desperate to get out of their homes. But...
Yeah. I actually was in an Airbnb the weekend before last with my family in Santa Cruz.
Lovely. Well, let's move on to one of my favorite, new feature podcast of the week. And these people have actually stolen my title. I'm the How to Fix guy. I wrote a book called How to Fix the Future. I put on a show called How to Fix Democracy. And now these people have the cheek to call their podcast How to Fix the Internet.
Yep.
I've been writing about for years. Who are these people and why should they listen? Why should we listen to the podcast, Keith?
Well, there you are. It's Rainey Reitman and the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
They've always been intellectual thieves. They're, I think, in the business of legitimizing intellectual theft. They've stolen my idea. Is it a good podcast though?
Tell you the truth, I haven't listened to it yet. I only put it in because of the title and I knew it would irritate you.
So you're putting in podcasts that you haven't listened to. Well, I'm sure it's interesting. My old friend Brad Templeton used to be the chairman of
Great guy, Brad.
of the EFF. They always do interesting stuff. Finally, my favorite thing of our show, tweet of the week by a political writer this week, Megan McArdle. What's Megan been tweeting about?
So Megan is a columnist at the Washington Post. Although her
Good
tweet,
one as well, an original one.
exactly, and her tweet is all about what it takes to be successful. It's a response to the Substack Arati article,
which is a great article, by the way. I urge everyone to read that one. I really enjoyed it. I was the one who actually convinced Keith to put that one in.
And so she defines what it takes to be successful if you really want to use these new platforms to build credibility. And she says, basically, you have to be an absolutely voracious information consumption person, which I am every day. That's where this newsletter comes from. You need to have a very fast reaction time, which I don't. You need to have the ability to write quickly and coherently, which I kind of do. You need to have the ability to cover a broad range of topics, which I don't, and the ability to keep it up over weeks, months, years, which I don't. Most people, even most writers, just can't do it. And it made me think about my good friend Michael Arrington, because he has all of these attributes. You do too, by the way, Andrew.
Yeah, but Mike Arrington looks more like Steve Bannon than I do.
Yeah, you look more like John Oliver.
Well, I should hope so. Yeah, I thought that this was particularly interesting in the context also of the news today that BuzzFeed are acquiring the Huffington Post, which once again suggests that these kind of new old style media companies, they're all dying again. And in the end, some other piece of crap will acquire BuzzFeed. None of these publications ever work, do they? And Ariana's been laughing all the way to the bank, but Huffington Post has always been a joke in my mind.
Well, underlying what you said is something Steve Gilmore's talked about for years. The attention economy doesn't yet have a scalable business model. Advertising sucks, targeting sucks. There's only so many subscriptions you can have, and micropayments for reading, which everyone talks about, has never been implemented successfully, at least. So we're in the age of lots of media and no business model. And I think that is going to be a big question for quite a long time to come.
And thinking of Steve Gilmore, you know, he looks like a left-wing version of Steve Bannon. I wonder if the fact they have the same first name is in any way suggestive. Finally, Keith, and if Steve is watching this, he will appreciate that joke. Finally, Keith, I see you're passing the hat around. You got 5,000 subscribers, 200 of them are paying. Why aren't you on Substack? Why isn't this a Substack product?
Actually, I'll show you people what you're talking about. So this is at the top of the newsletter, and it's basically a begging letter.
500 subscribers and 200 are paid. And to be fully transparent, I'm the mug here because Keith's not paying me anything. I don't see any of the money from those subscribers.
Exactly. Well, so, this is a good example of trying to figure out a business model. I think newsletter subscriptions is a business model. Some people are doing very well from it.
But there's a few. I mean, it's always the winner take all. So you've got people like Heather Cox Richardson, you've got Andrew Sullivan, you've got a few other people who are well known and making all the money. But there's no middle class on Substack, is there?
There isn't. And I think in order for there to be, that it will require an aggregation that's good enough. Medium, in a way, is doing this. Medium is making money now, and Medium is an aggregation of all kinds of people who write.
Is it making money, Medium?
It is, yeah.
Wow. Well, that we should that's a subject for another show. That was the week that was November the 19th. We barely mentioned Paul Graham. We didn't mention Donald Trump. But we talked a lot about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and antitrust, and we'll be back again next week for That Was the Week.
Thank you, Andrew. Interestingly enough, my videos don't play this week. In post-production, when you watch this, there's going to be a video at the beginning and a video at the end, but not right now. Bye, everyone.
Good joke about Steve